In 2009, Westfield named its first mile of the Monon Greenway to Alyn Bernell. The Hoosier Rails to Trails Council proudly provides this and subsequent interviews to honor Alyn Bernell's dedication for his many years in bringing about the Monon Greenway. Since today is December 7th, what do you remember of hearing about Pearl Harbor?
I was in an apartment on 1200 South Brown Street in Dayton, Ohio. The reason I remember it was because it was up over my father's saloon, my grandfather's saloon, where he lived. We heard it on the radio.
And how old were you?
December 7th. I was 12 years old.
What got you interested in trails to begin with?
I've always been interested in the woods and the greenery and traveling in the woods, and I grew up in the woods in Pennsylvania, northwest Pennsylvania. And when we came to Indiana, and I retired after 40 years with the same company in 1991, there appeared a small article in the Noblesville Ledger. We would like to mention to all people out there that are interested in trails and parks to meet at the building in the Judicial Center in Noblesville.
And about when was that? What year?
1991.
91.
And there were probably 70, 75 people showed up. Lots of public officials, county officials, people that were active and interested in parks, a lot of people who just liked the outdoors. And there was a real crowd of do-something type people there.
And what were some of the do-somethings that occurred early on?
They decided to organize and get going and see about getting a Hamilton County trails group going. And I think right at the first or second gathering like this, they were going to call it the Hamilton County Trails Group. And a fellow who has advertising smarts named Ron Carter, who is now and has long since been a city councilman in Carmel, had an advertising background, at the time worked for an advertising company in Carmel. And he said, why don't we make this something that rolls off the tongue easily? Instead of a whole long list of what this is going to be, let's call it the Hamilton County Alternative Transportation Group, and let's abbreviate it to HCAT.
What have been some of the activities that you have been involved with in the trails and leading up to the Westfield Monon?
Oh my gosh, Richard. How long have you got?
Well, just name.
I'm being facetious, of course, but we split off into several different groups from different towns. There were doctors and lawyers and public officials and all kinds of people involved, and a lot of people that just were there to see what's going on. And we decided where to meet. We met back there a couple more times. Then we decided to meet and call this, split up in different groups like Noblesville and Carmel. Eventually everybody, jumping ahead a little bit, telescoping a little bit, we decided that we would all meet in Carmel every month. And we met at Blue and Company accounting firm down in Carmel in their meeting rooms. It's a very beautiful meeting place which they donated to us, made available to us. We decided to have, each little town had a fair. Noblesville has its summer activities, official summer activities. Carmel, Westfield. Westfield had a thing called Summer Fest. Carmel has Carmel Fest. We decided to participate in these things. We decided to have a booth there and sell things that were with the same Monon on them, or just trails or parks or HCAT t-shirts. And we decided to have petitions there and so have people sign up. We'd like to see a trail. And somebody said, you know, there's this old railroad that used to run through Carmel called the Monon. It's just sitting there now. And why don't we have people come up and sign up? We like that Scott Mason, you know Scott Mason, Richard, our first president. Scott is a very articulate guy. We got some attorneys in on it and all that from Carmel. telling us how to proceed, how to draw up bylaws, draw up a constitution to protect ourselves against any type of legal problems. And so we just got really going. Pretty soon we got the politicians to come in, and we got to say, and then shortening up a little bit, we got to say, if you're running in the next election, there was an election coming up soon, very soon after that. We said, if you want to get elected to office, this can be a platform you can run on. And a guy that showed up very early on to one of our meetings, we didn't even know him, was Jim Brainerd, nobody knew him then, an attorney in Carmel. And eventually became, soon after this, became mayor of Carmel, and is still the mayor of Carmel. And we convinced Mayor Brainerd, and he convinced himself a lot, this would be a good thing for his platform. If you got 800 and some signatures just that quick, a couple of days at a booth, it ought to be much easier to get a whole lot more signatures. It get easier to get people to go up and down the old Monon line, house to house, knock on doors and say, would you mind? We had this wonderful trail for hiking and bicycling up and down your trail. It goes right by your house. Would that be all right with you? And we got a few no's, but overwhelmingly the people were for it. They said, we wouldn't mind having a trail go by here. You're not going to have any motorized vehicles. You're going to have motorcycles, scooters, cars, jeeps, anything like that. Strictly be human-powered vehicles or walking and hiking. He said, we'd love it. So we got a whole lot more signatures, and Jim Brainerd made it part of his platform to run for mayor of Carmel. Of course, he was elected right away. And he credited that himself with a big reason that to help him become something other than an unknown guy coming out of nowhere to run for mayor of Carmel. And so he became one of our huge supporters. We got a lot of people like that around who put their stamp on it and said, we like it for Westfield, we like it for Noblesville. We got the Parks Director people. At the time we had Mac Dickey as Director of Parks in Carmel. You remember Matt? And we had Don Seal in Noblesville. They all signed on to it. And it just began to mushroom. And everybody thought it was a great idea.
What were a couple of the setbacks? What obstacles did you run into?
Well, we ran into quite a few, as I'm sure you recall a few of them, Richard. We'd go to the schools at night and the PTO meetings and all kind of things, and have special meetings for the Monon and New Route 31. And some very vocal, articulate, unfortunately, people showed up and said, we don't want this. We had some heavy opposition. One fellow built a fence behind his house, sat out there on his back porch at night and kind of stood guard, told everybody that came up there they were not allowed to walk through there, that was his land. So we got by all that, and that was one of the more interesting obstacles that we had. And he told everybody that they were subject to fine if they crossed that fence. And it was interesting. Then we had the president of the Monon Greenways, which was Scott Mason still at the time. And I went to the guy and offered to buy his house. He wouldn't sell. And then the man that had that lost his job and was full-time anti-Monon. And he put up a good fight. I admired his tenacity, even though we were on opposite sides of the fence.
There was the transition from Carmel to Westfield. How did that transition occur?
Well, first, Scott Mason was our first president, and he was active for a couple of years as president. We then turned it over to Karen Bone, B-O-H-N. She was our second president, and we were still mostly centered in Carmel, and HCAT, allied with us, centered in Noblesville. And then Karen Bone was, we were pretty well getting wrapped up in Carmel with the progress. We knew it was going to happen. We transferred out here to Hamilton County then. Not to Hamilton County, to Washington Township. Because, of course, Carmel's in Hamilton County too, but in Clay Township. So we wanted to move across the Washington Township line into Westfield. So then I became the third president of the Monon Greenways Association, as we called ourselves. I was the third president. We moved out here, had our meetings in the firehouse right here on 151st Street and 31. So then I was the last president of the Monon Greenway Committee. By the time I went out, left that, we were pretty well rolling in Westfield.
I presume that after Jim Brainerd was elected mayor, the Carmel portion, well, we don't presume, we know, it began to move
much faster.
Much faster.
Yes.
And so that then afforded you the chance, you and others in the Westfield area, to concentrate on the Westfield section.
Yes, and we had a little sale to do there because there's always been a little bit of rivalry. It goes way, way back to high school rivalries and things like that between Westfield High School and Carmel High School. And we said, we had to be careful how we said it. We said, look what they've done in that nameless city to the south. Of course, we really meant Carmel. We didn't use the name. They knew what we were talking about, and they'd laugh. Look what they have done. We can do it here too. They said, well, we're not Carmel. We're kind of vociferous, you know, we're not Carmel. We said, yes, but look what it's done. It can work for business. Look what it's done for the business. We had business people that had businesses along the functioning Monon about the year 2000. We said what it had done for their business, improved their business. And we had them come and talk to Chamber here again and to business people and got them on board. But they began to see that it was a reality and it could happen, and it didn't really. Nothing happened in Carmel. All these terrible things that were going to happen, crimes and stealing and thievery and stuff happening in the middle of the night, never happened in Carmel.
After, going back to Westfield, after 2003, and you had the maps around the ceiling in the room of the city, now the city council, what steps occurred as the city council got more into this? What steps did they take, and where did the steam fill out to bring the trail to open in 2009?
They passed a resolution in the city council, town council, I keep remembering that, forgetting to be changed, to approve this as a concept. And then the township board, who is under the auspices of the township trustee, was against it at first. And we were going through both the township and the town. We had to get them on the same playing field. And the township board, finally we talked to them, and the township trustee we got on our side. We got a new township trustee, ran for township trustee, and he was for it. And he won. We like to think that it had something to do with why he won, because he was supporting, as with Jim Brainerd in Carmel. And then we eventually got and talked to and lobbied the township board to sign a joint agreement with the town council of Westfield, so that, because it went through both entities, the right-of-way, and they agreed to, in principle, to do it. And then we eventually got them on board too, and pretty soon everybody began to fall in line. We still have some people who are still against it. They're nice people, just very determined, but they have not been able to sell their concept. And as you know, it goes right now, as we sit here now, it's paved up to 161st Street, which is right out here, and not far from my home. And what was supposed to go to Route 32 by the end of this year, paved, but it's not going to make it because we had a couple of holdouts still on property. But we'll be starting again north of 161st Street to go to 32 this spring. As you also probably know, Richard, we just got a grant from INDOT, about $1 million grant, $1.2 million, I think, which will take it then on up further toward the 216th Street, which is the township line of Washington Township, on the way to Sheridan, and the county will pick it up from there to the Sheridan municipality, and Sheridan will take it, as you know, already is taking it into Sheridan.
Now, when you say this spring, you mean spring of
Coming spring.
2010?
Yes.
Okay.
exactly.